Let's start by defining what failure is to you.
I can't manifest the mindset and the attitude that I need to either fix or overcome what went wrong, if I use the word failure.
I usually find that when things aren't going as planned, that the reluctance to put your hand up and say, I'm raising the flag, things are not going as planned, sometimes people are fearful of even doing that. And so I always then think when there is that behavior, it's even more difficult to support a person after the fact.
You have to state the expectation to say, listen, if something went wrong, let's talk about it. Okay, if you don't talk about it, I don't know about it, and I can't help you. All right, that's for me the most important topic. It must be very, very clear who's working with me. If you don't share with me, if you don't talk to me, I cannot help you. I decided at some point in life to ban the word failure.
You did?
That might also be because when you translate it into German, my native language, it's very harsh and very negative.
What is it in German?
Versagen.
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 Versagen. Okay.
In China, failure, of course, is a very big thing in the culture, right? And you have the situation where you lose face, and where people really struggle to get out of what went wrong.
I've learned over the years is the importance of giving yourself time to learn. Like you were saying, if you're leading a team you haven't led before, or you're changing departments, or you're changing countries like you have, investing that time to learn, to listen, to understand, to observe is another signal and enabler for humility.
For me, it's very situational. All right.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
if we all know that something went wrong, and we all think to know who made a mistake, then I would still try to give that person the opportunity to speak up. Him or herself, right? I would not point out, not at the beginning at least. However, at some point in a conversation, you must draw a line, and then again, it's depending on the situation. You can do it in front of the team, or you can wait until the meeting is over, take that person to your office and say, listen, now let's talk about it. Okay, you made a mistake.
Today we are joined by Sebastian Hardt. He is the current CFO of Bosch Rexroth Africa and has a career spanning 17 years across the globe in one of the world's leading engineering firms. From the US, Denmark, Germany, and China, he's navigated the high-stakes world of automotive and now industrial automation. But as we know, a polished resume doesn't tell the whole story. We are going to dive into the lessons learned, the pivots made, and the moments of failure that shaped his journey. Welcome, Sebastian, to Cheers to Failure.
Thank you very much for having me.
I'm so glad you said yes to being in conversation with me about what failure means to you, and what failure means to you in your personal life as well as in your professional life. Let's start by defining what failure is to you. Like, how do you define failure? Because when you and I had a conversation, you did say there are parts of your life you don't consider. You don't use the term failure or failing. Tell us about that. How do you define failure?
So I decided at some point in life to ban the word failure.
You did?
That might also be because when you translate it into German, my native language, it's very harsh and very negative.
What is it in German?
Versagen.
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 Versagen. Okay.
And it brings a very, very negative tone. So I decided at some point to follow a little bit the philosophy that Thomas Edison once said. He said, I never failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work.
Yeah.
And in my case, I would like to say I never failed.
Yeah.
I just did not always succeed.
Yeah, love that. Reframing, obviously,
Exactly,
is
yes.
everything. Why is it important for you to see failure like that? I never failed. I just didn't succeed. What does that do for you and how you approach life?
Yeah. So for me personally, what I already said, it brings a very negative tone, the word failure. And second of all, I can't manifest the mindset and the attitude that I need to either fix or overcome what went wrong, if I use the word failure, right? I want to bring it into a different context. If you bring it in the context of sports, it's a huge difference if you ask someone, so did you and your team lose? or if you say, did the other team win?
Just shifting and kind of asking
Shifting.
from a different perspective.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Because what you
yeah.
want to create, you want to create the mindset of, okay, next time I'm gonna win, right? This time the others won, next time I'm gonna win, which is you implement a winner mentality rather than a not losing mentality.
Okay, I love that. In your personal life, what do you teach? You've got one child?
2 kids.
2 kids?
Yes.
How do you teach them about not winning and not succeeding?
So my daughter is 9 years old, and there I try to focus or shift the focus on what she can do better next time. Okay, and in fact I have an example which is just very new.
Tell us.
So we were in Germany a few weeks ago, 3 weeks ago now, and my daughter had a huge concert, right? 2,500 people in the audience.
Wow.
She was picked to have a rap solo together with 3 other girls, and a big choir on stage. The orchestra was there, and the 2 guys who wrote that song, they flew into Hamburg and were also sitting in the audience.
Wow, so lots of pressure.
Lots of pressure, right? Music starts, and the first girl has a rap solo, a music sequence in between the second girl, and so on. And then it's my daughter's turn, and the mic doesn't work.
Oh my God.
And of course, she realized that the mic wasn't working, right? But she sang her lungs out and finished her part.
Continued like nothing went wrong.
Exactly, and then after the song, there was a few more songs after that. So she went back to the choir, and of course, I could see that she wasn't happy.
Her energy had shifted.
And after the concert, I picked her up backstage at the exit where all the kids came out, and she came to me and she cried. Of course, she was bawling, right? But relatively fast after this, we were already on the way back home, walking on the street. She immediately started to go into the stage of, okay, what went wrong, and what can I do differently next time? And I mean, I want to believe that she got that a little bit from me, not getting stuck too much on the failure, not feeling like you failed, not feeling like because this is also when you get stuck too much on what failed, what went wrong, you also victimize very fast, or you make yourself a victim. She started processing it, and afterwards it was good again.
That's beautiful. That's
and I'm pretty
beautiful.
sure if you ask her today, and no matter, because she speaks fluent English, if you would use the German or the English word, if you asked her today, did you fail in the last month? I think she would not come up with an example, okay? But if you'd ask her, was there anything that went wrong and that where you learned something, I'm pretty sure she would come up with that example and say, that with the concert.
And so when you think about the cultures, because you've lived in different parts of the world, you've lived in China recently, you are now in South Africa. Where else have you lived? In the US?
Very shortly in the US, 3 years in Denmark. Yes.
So your observation with all of these different cultural experiences you've had across the world, what would you say is unique to each culture in terms of how they view failure or how they deal philosophically with things having gone wrong?
I mean, there I want to bring the example of China, obviously, right? Because and I'll say China and not Asian culture, because I can't generalize. But in China, failure, of course, is a very big thing in the culture, right? And you have the situation where you lose face. And where people really struggle to get out of what went wrong. And there, of course, I also try to bring my mindset in, and I try to teach the people I was working with to not get stuck too much. Of course, we have to understand what went wrong, okay, but not with the focus on asking who did something wrong, but simply what went wrong.
What
okay,
happened,
not who made a mistake, but what happened, right? Which is important to create an environment where people feel safe to talk about what went wrong. And at some point, I also managed that people started saying, "Hey, I made a mistake," which is very hard in the Chinese environment. That people really admit to a mistake, especially in professional life, professional environment. So I would say that was definitely the biggest difference to my personal mindset that I've experienced so far. The other countries and the other cultures I worked in or I've lived in, they're very similar to the approach.
You see, like that's exactly the reason why I felt this conversation was important. It's because it's a struggle for a lot of us and across different cultures in the world. It's difficult to own up to say I was a part of the team that did this, which didn't go right, or it was my leadership style or decision at the time that got that outcome that didn't go right. And it really, the difficulty in owning up and the challenge of perhaps getting out of it like you do with your daughter to say, well, don't get stuck in that moment. It was just a moment. You learned something. Now you've got to start thinking about what to do differently. In your personal life, I know we chatted about this, and you and I have a thing in common, being divorced.
Getting divorced, yes.
Yes. So I'm divorced for a couple of years now. And that is one of the things that have been quite a big failure thing gone wrong in my life. But now, life has continued. I've grown. I've met a wonderful man, my partner, and my kids are happy, etc. How do you frame that moment with you of relationship failing in your personal space? And
I mean, failing relationships or not succeeding in relationships is a part of life, right? It happens to most of us. I would say the majority of people have the experience of unsuccessful relationships, be it personal or be it professionally. So also there, I would not consider that as a failure, as a failed relationship. You learned something from it, you moved on, and then you find more beautiful people afterwards.
I know.
You start over again, and of course, hopefully, you learn something from it.
I've had to look at what do I need to do differently now as a partner, because obviously, like you're saying, you learn something. So I've learned more patience. I've learned to be more tolerant. I've learned, like, other things that in your behavior you would say you have learned as a partner now. What have you learned? What are you doing? What are you doing differently?
I would say I got more patient too. Maybe also a little bit more
patience
resilient.
In relationships is important.
Exactly. Yes. So I would say patience and resilience. And a better understanding and being open to understand the other person.
It makes a big difference. Yes, it really makes a big difference. In terms of Sebastian, the CFO, other ways you coach your team in terms of dealing with challenges that they experience on a daily, regular basis in their roles?
I mean, in terms of the topic of failing, what I said before, I mean, I don't necessarily change that or adapt it to the environment too much. It's still, again, the mindset. Challenges or things that went wrong decisions. First of all, as a leader, you have to own up to it yourself. Okay, you have to set the example, because if you don't own up to your own mistakes, you cannot expect your colleagues or employees to own up. Right, that's the first very important thing. And the second thing, I try to create an environment where people feel safe enough. I mean, there's a very good book from Amy Edmondson, Fearless Organization, where she talks about psychological safety.
Psychological safety.
But it mustn't be misunderstood as we are all nice to each other, okay, and we cover everything up, okay, and we are safe. I also don't like the term a company is a family, because that doesn't exist.
It doesn't exist. There was a clip I saw last week about exactly that, how it is incorrect to define your workspace as family.
Absolutely not.
And what should we define it as? How do you define your workspace?
I define it as a contractual agreement. Okay, you perform, you get paid. You don't perform, you're out. Okay, I never heard that someone is being kicked out of the family because he or she was bad at school. So this is about unconditional love. A work
Yeah.
relationship is not unconditional. It has
Yeah.
conditions. Okay,
Yeah,
I expect
yeah.
something from you, and you can
Yeah.
expect something from me,
Yeah.
right? We have a contract with each other, right?
That's true.
I don't have a contract with my kids, right?
Yeah.
I unconditionally love them, so and
Yeah.
that's a big difference. That's why
Yeah.
companies are not families. I don't like that term either, right?
Yeah.
However, to get back to the topic
Coaching your team,
coaching the
yeah.
team and,
Yeah.
and creating a psychological safe environment is giving people the feeling they can speak up, they can own up to their mistakes.
Yeah.
There is a safe environment where they can criticize, where criticism and feedback is a regular thing. I don't want to say a daily thing, but a regular thing.
It's regular, yeah.
And it's up to you as a leader to create this environment and to make sure that everybody is on the same mindset. Let's
Yeah,
say.
yeah, and so what would your conversation look like then when the team or the person is not owning up? Because there are people, and I lead a team myself, and I usually find that when things aren't going as planned, that the reluctance to put your hand up and say, I'm raising the flag, things are not going as planned, sometimes people are fearful of even doing that. And so I always then think when there is that behavior, it's even more difficult to support a person after the fact. And the results are now what they are. How do you deal with a person who struggles to speak up and say they are struggling with something or the outcome is not going to come out as planned?
I mean, for me, it's very situational. All right.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
if we all know that something went wrong and we all think to know who made a mistake, then I would still try to give that person the opportunity to speak up. Him or herself, right? I would not point out, not at the beginning at least.
Yeah.
However, at some point in a conversation, you must draw a line, and then again, it's depending on the situation. You can do it in front of the team, or you can wait until the meeting is over, take that person to your office and say, listen, now let's talk about it. Okay, you made a mistake. It's not bad. Depending on what situation.
Yes, I know, right? Depends on the situation.
It depends on the situation,
Yeah.
but we all make mistakes, right?
Yeah.
But then you need a clear talk. And for me, it's also stating expectations. Okay, I cannot expect people to read my mind, and I can't read minds of other people, right? So that means you have to state the expectation to say, listen, if something went wrong, let's talk about it. Okay, if you don't talk about it, I don't know about it, and I can't help you. All right, that's for me the most important topic. It must be very, very clear who's working with me. If you don't share with me, if you don't talk to me, I cannot help you, and I will not help you. Okay, sorry for that. And that is where you can then, over time, hopefully create an environment where people do speak up. Okay, and say again, not as I made a mistake, so what's the big deal? I mean, there must still be a certain sense of urgency and seriousness in the discussion, right? But again, we talk about it and then we can fix it. We don't talk about it, we can't fix
it.
we can't-
Yeah. If you think about how you lead now to how you were leading when you were, I don't know, 30 years old, 25 years old, how has that shifted?
Oh, significantly.
What's changed?
Yeah, I mean, I truly think that I know there's a sentence: "Leaders are born, not made." But I cannot fully support that statement. Okay, I can agree insofar that there is people that are naturally born with the ability to lead, okay, but you still have to experience it and practice it, right? And there is people that are based on their personality are not leaders, okay? They don't want to be it. They maybe don't have the ability to convince people and so on. So when I started as a leader, of course, I had no experience, and in my first team, I was the youngest of them. All right, all my employees were older. The oldest one was I think a year before retirement.
Sure.
So of course, at the beginning, we had this. In German, say, literally translated, you're sniffing each other out, okay? Like you're testing a little bit the waters, okay?
What's the word in German?
Beschnuppern.
Beschnuppern.
Yeah, exactly. Man beschnuppert sich.
Yes.
And of course that's what happened, and that's where you try to move towards each other, that was pretty much the big learning throughout my entire career. Every time you go into a new team, you have to meet the team members, you have to experience the team members, you have to learn what the personalities are, and at the beginning I don't want to say I was a hothead, but of course I was very convinced about myself. Okay.
Yes.
You're young. How old was I? 30. I was 30 or 31 when I had my first management role. And of course you sit there. You have your own office. I mean, you're king of the castle, right? I mean, that's the feeling. And I think the most important thing that I learned was you always have to stay humble. And that is also something that people feel, okay, and where people then might follow you rather than if you're not humbled, okay. If you're a know-it-all, then you will have it hard. I think.
You will. The one thing that I've learned over the years is the importance of giving yourself time to learn. Like you were saying, if you're leading a team you haven't led before, or you're changing departments, or you're changing countries like you have, investing that time to learn, to listen, to understand, to observe is another signal and enabler for humility. I have found that in a lot of roles, people come in with the knowledge they have from the past and almost believe that that is all they need to make the impact from now on to the next challenge. And that's not always true. It's not always true. What kind of attitude and characteristics do you look for when you hire a person that can collaborate and work well with you? You know, like I look, for me, it's entrepreneurial people are important. People who can speak up and are confident is important. You've got to be open to having a debate and discussion. And if you're not willing to take other people's opinions, then you're highly likely not going to work that well with me. So how would you define, one or two, three things that should be present in a person that works well with you?
And there I want to focus on personality, really, because I know some people don't like it, but a lot of companies say we don't hire for skills, we hire for personality, because skills we can train, right? And I think there's a little bit of truth in it, and at least for myself, I look at personalities, because when I get CVs, some people already looked at them, and I assume that we pick people that bring the skills, right? The basic skills, like an academic degree and so on and so forth, and a certain amount of work experience. So I don't really have to ask that. Okay, my interviews are normally not an assessment center where I'm assessing skills necessarily, right? I'm looking at personality, and I like to ask the questions: have there been a situation, or has there been situations in your life where you made a mistake, and what did you learn from it? What did you do differently next time?
Why is that? Why do you like to ask that question?
Because for me, self-reflection is a very important characteristic or a personality trait. You have to be able to, again, own up to a mistake, but at the same time have a process running that where you reflect and you manifest your learning and you make sure it doesn't happen again. So for me, that is very, very important. One topic. Of course, I like to ask the question: how do you like to be managed? Okay, how do you like to be led? Okay, what is your expectation? How do you define a good leader? All right. And I mean, there are a little bit of the side discourse. It's also important as a manager, and that's what I learned as well. Coming back to the previous question, as a manager, you cannot be liked by everybody all the time. Okay, and that was very, very hard for me at the beginning.
It takes a lot to learn
I always
that.
wanted to please everybody.
I
Okay, my first team was rather
know.
small. It was 5-6 people. There it might be a little bit easier. Okay, but usually your managerial span increases over time, right? And you have more and more people. It gets harder and harder. Okay, if at some point you have 100 people in your organization, I mean, it's absolutely sure that they will not all like you, and you should not make that your life goal in that moment. moment that they like you. But anyways, in interviews, I ask the question,
how they want to be led.
how? Because there I'm basically asking with the background of, has that person ever thought about that? What are the expectations? And again, is that person able to describe these expectations? So that's the second one. So that's the skill of, I would say, are you able to bring over your expectations so that I understand it? And last but not least, I always ask, what do you want to achieve? Okay, I don't ask the question, where do you see yourself in 5 to 10 years? Well, I mean, that's
where
really.
do you see yourself in the next 10 years?
Exactly. Yeah, I don't like that kind of question. Okay, that's why I keep it open, and I also keep it open professionally or privately. Same goes for the question, what went wrong in your life, and what did you learn from it? It doesn't have to be purely a professional question.
So my questions, similar to you, the ones that I like. One, I ask to test how they deal with conflict. I love asking tell me of a moment where you had the most challenging conversation with a department that usually struggles with marketing, because I'm in marketing.
Yes.
So I'll ask, for example, finance. A lot of marketing folk don't get along with finance people.
Oh, I'm surprised to hear that.
Sorry, we love our CFOs.
You always just want money.
I know, and we just we get going on projects without getting the right necessary processes in place. So that's a source of conflict. The legal department and compliance are usually sources of friction. So I would say, tell me, just visualize one person from either one of these departments.
Yes.
How would they describe you when there is conflict and friction? And I learn about how they show up when they're in a corner, pushed to a corner. My second one is to ask them, what are their non-negotiables? What would get you to pick up the phone and call me and say, I didn't sign up for this? Because then I understand culturally what they are expecting from the environment that they would work in. And then I also thirdly ask, what will your team say should you get this job in your farewell? What will they miss about you? Because then it kind of shows up and it kind of gives a picture of how they've been experienced by their previous colleagues.
Yeah, and it's more important what people say about you when you're not in the room anymore, rather than when you're in the room. Yeah.
I know. So we're drawing near to the close. How would you advise a university student who is afraid of getting things wrong?
Yeah.
Well, they're just about to start their careers. Obviously, the education system is very different to corporate or running the outside world, business, etc. How would you advise that person? What would you say they should? How do they overcome the fear of getting things wrong?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm not officially mentoring some of my colleagues from previous locations, but unofficially I have regular calls with them every once in a while. Just this week, I had a nice phone call with a Chinese colleague who asked if we can exchange because she has questions about her career. And what I usually start with is a quote that I picked up many years ago. It says, life is 10% of what happens to me and 90% of how I react to it. Okay, things happen. All right, it is what it is. Move on. Okay, and again, don't focus on 10%, but focus on the 90% that you can do. All right, mistakes will happen. Mistakes are a big part of our life. And we can cheers to mistakes, or we can embrace them. Right, but it's important. We always have to keep in mind that mistakes happen. So don't be afraid. All right, because fear will not help you. Right, fear might block you. Fear might lead to a situation where you don't take a decision because you're just so afraid of taking the wrong decision. And I always say that not taking a decision is worse than taking a wrong decision. Okay. So that's for me how I would usually that would be for me the most important lesson or hint that I would give a student or someone who starts his or her professional career.
And what are your methods of just I guess what am I going to call this moment, like decompressing? Is it the gym for you? Is it doing therapy, going to
Maybe I should have needed
talking to
therapy
a
sometimes. I don't know.
coach, or is it cooking in the kitchen? But how do you actually decompress, relax, and breathe to face the next day's challenges?
I don't have a standard routine.
You
Okay,
don't?
it really
Yeah.
depends.
Yeah.
Sometimes it helps to just come home, talk to my girlfriend, and drink a glass of whiskey.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, whiskey is me. Whiskey and me are one.
Yeah. Sometimes it is the gym. Okay.
Yeah.
Sometimes I want to be alone. Okay. Sometimes I do not want to talk about my day. That might sometimes be hard for a partner. Of course. How was your day?
Yeah.
I don't want to talk about it. You feel left out. However, sometimes I do not want to talk about it. Okay, I don't want to relive a certain situation, or I want to relive them by myself, but not with someone else. So yeah, it can be the gym. It can be watching Netflix. Okay, just and nothing super intelligent. Sometimes it's just that there's a motion picture and some sound. Okay,
Yeah.
sometimes I wouldn't even be able to tell you what I watched yesterday, and on
Yeah.
some of those days, right? It's just you just sit there and stare at the TV.
Yeah,
Okay?
yeah.
So it's very different. But I don't
Yeah.
have this one standard. It's just important that you have some tools to decompress. That's
Yeah.
very important.
Yeah. I love that you say you don't want to relive the moment when you tell stories about your day and retell them again. Because I'm only realizing now that when I go on talking about stuff, especially stuff that's affected me negatively, I'm actually emotionally reliving the moment. I never connected the moment of retelling the story to how it impacts my mind, how it impacts my emotion in that moment. But one has got to be aware that every time you are talking and you bring all of the emotion back, that you are reliving the moment.
Absolutely. And it is healthy sometimes. Again, I mean, I'm not saying you shouldn't do that, right?
Yeah.
But there is situations where I personally don't want to do it. In this very situation, it can be that I come back 2 days later and say, listen, this is what happened 2 days ago. Now we can talk about it.
Yeah.
Okay. But sometimes I personally need alone time, and I need the space to just get over certain
Love
things.
it.
Yeah.
Love it. Love it. Well, that comes to the end of our conversation,
very much.
Sebastian. Thank you so much for joining us on Cheers to Failure, Sebastian. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please won't you do me a favor? Click the subscribe button as well as the notifications button so you know when we've got new content on our YouTube channel. And share it with your friends, whoever you believe needs to know that failure doesn't mark the end, but is filled with beautiful, glorious lessons we all need to have. Thank you.